Good afternoon. What a marvelous event. I was just mentioning that this is like brain fertilizer. I mean, it's an amazing thing. You just heard that I was paralyzed a few years ago. So let me bring you up to date because obviously I look pretty good to you, I'm sure. I'm still partially paralyzed from my mid-chest down and partially numb, particularly my hands and feet. My entire body has that sensation that your arm has when it's been asleep and it starts to wake up. I still don't have normal bowel and bladder function, and I'm sure that's a TMI statement to some of you, but that is the reality of paralysis. But I'm very privileged to have as much function as I have, and I'm privileged to be here with you today. To evolve means to gradually emerge or to slowly adapt to a different environment or circumstance. And from a Darwinian perspective, evolution occurs all the time around us. And we evolve personally, our communities evolve, our societies evolve. It's really change over time. Now, how does that change occur? Well, most of the time, we choose to change. But on occasion, change chooses us. And I want to share a personal story, my adventure with paralysis, that I think illustrates some of these concepts. So my story begins in 1999. I was a practicing OBGYN in the south part of the Salt Lake Valley. I'd delivered hundreds of babies, and I'm in lots of pictures like this. And no, I don't know who that is, whose baby that is. But it's been long enough now that it wouldn't surprise me if someday somebody doesn't walk up and go, "Hey, that's me." And I'll be able to say, "Gee, I hope you look better than you did then." Nevertheless, it was a thrilling opportunity to help people bring children into this world. Most of the time, happy things happened, and occasionally when it's bad, it's really bad. But nevertheless, it was a great privilege. At home, I had a very supportive wife and 4 rambunctious sons, 3 of which you see here on our now non-existent trampoline because this is where my accident happened. So on a July evening, a beautiful summer evening, I came home from work, and after a late dinner, went out to jump on the trampoline for a little recreation. And on a laid-out backflip, realized very quickly I didn't have enough rotation to complete that maneuver. Landed on my neck in such a way that I completely and suddenly became totally paralyzed from the neck down. And I knew exactly what had happened. I knew that my existence as a husband, a father, a physician was done. I even knew who the physician was at the university that was going to take care of me. What I didn't know, and what was most frightening, was what was going to happen to me in my future life. And as my father-in-law is fond of saying, I felt like the mosquito in the nudist colony. I had no idea where to begin. Well, I was evaluated by my medical colleagues, and sure enough, the severity of the injury showed that the prognosis was most likely that I would spend the remainder of my days in a power wheelchair, probably being driven by a head array or a sip and puff tube. And at that point, my only goal was to have one arm to drive the joystick of a power wheelchair. And of course, my wife accused me of wanting to drive and talk at the same time, which is probably true. I was taken care of at the university hospital by the medical professionals, and then I was sent to the rehab unit. Now, rehab is an unusual place, and this is why. Most of us go to the hospital with the anticipation that we're going to get better. And even if you die, in some ways you're getting better. You know, you're being transferred to the ECU, the Eternal Care Unit. If you find that you're going to rehab, it's usually because you've had a spinal cord injury, a traumatic brain injury, a stroke, or some type of trauma where you're never going to be the same again. You're not going to get better, you're going to get different. And getting different is something that we are not accustomed to. It's a very foreign concept, it's very frightening, and it's overwhelming. And that's where I found myself. Now, looking at this picture, here's a bright idea worth sharing, going off the TED theme. If you ever find yourself in this circumstance and you have your picture taken, you wear dark glasses so no one will recognize you. Well, as I went through my rehab, obviously things were, I was fortunate to get some neurological recovery. And this is me accomplishing my goal of driving the power wheelchair with the joystick. And I'm proud to tell you this is the only day I spent in my power wheelchair because I said, okay, I accomplished that goal. Give me a manual chair so I can start pushing my manual chair on my own. I was also trying to reinvent myself in terms of just taking care of everyday activities, dressing myself, showering, personal hygiene, and even things like eating. And in this particular picture, you can see my occupational therapist has this wild and wacky fork given to me with arm braces so I can relearn how to feed myself. And I've always been amused by the fact that you're going to give someone with terrible motor skills a very sharp object without eye protection. Well, I spent about 3.5 months in the hospital, had a couple of surgeries, some complications, and was eventually discharged to home, fortunately with both eyes in. And when I got home, I was fortunate to at least have home health care benefits. So I was getting my occupational and physical therapy at home. And I had the good fortune to meet a remarkable physical therapist by the name of Jan Black. And I knew very quickly that she was going to be the key to help me make progress. In fact, I ended up working with Jan for about 2.5 years, almost on a full-time basis, to try and capitalize on this neurological recovery that I have. And part of that result is you see today. And things were going along well. So now, I remember I was injured in 1999. This is now in 2001. And as you can see, I've made some remarkable progress. I now am walking with 2 arm crutches. I still don't have very much endurance. I still don't have really good hand function. And remember, my sensation is not very good. But I realize at this point I need a new goal. I need something that's really going to force me to push harder. Well, I find out that the U.S. Olympic Organizing Committee is going to allow ordinary citizens to carry the Olympic torch in association with the Winter Olympics held here in Salt Lake in 2002. And the light bulb goes on. And I say, I want to be a torchbearer. But I just don't want to be a torchbearer like I am now. I want to carry the Olympic torch without a cane, a crutch, a wheelchair, with my own hands. Keep in mind what I told you about my hands. Now you're talking about carrying a fairly heavy object with gloves on in the cold. I don't want to be the guy who drops the Olympic torch on TV. I just as soon light my hair on fire as do that. So I know I have some big challenges, but nevertheless, my goals became Jan's goals, became our goals. Now, you had to be nominated to be a torchbearer. I nominated myself. I had everyone I knew nominate me, and I found out that in July of 2001 that I would be a torchbearer for the following February. So I had about 6 months to train. I went to a public pool and practiced walking in the pool. In fact, I even practiced running with the idea that maybe I could even run with the torch. I was watching TV one night and I saw this show on paralysis, and there was this $50,000 harness system at UCLA that was used to help train people how to walk. And I said to Jan, we need to take advantage of this technology. Well, we didn't have $50,000. I couldn't go to Los Angeles. So this is our $250 Home Depot version of that system. It's a modified safety harness with ropes and pulleys over a home treadmill. And on multiple times during the week, I would get on my treadmill, remove body weight, and I would start walking. I knew that I was going to have to walk 0.2 of a mile with my 15 minutes of flame. And I also knew that the weight and length of the Olympic torch. So I requisitioned one of my son's baseball bats, put an ankle weight on there to create a Pseudotorch. And on a regular occasion, I would go to the high school track and walk once around the track. And as the weather started getting colder, I started wearing gloves. So I would know what it would feel like to change hands and to deal with the numbness. And about 2 weeks before my turn, a friend of mine brought me her real torch that she'd carried in another state. And I was able to use that to adequately prepare for what was to come. And so on February 8th, the last day of the Olympic torch relay, as the flame is heading toward the Olympic Stadium, I had the opportunity to complete that goal of being an Olympic torchbearer. And this was a very... Obviously a very surreal and sacred experience for me, because this is the only time that you're carrying an emblem universally recognized by all people everywhere. And the other thing that made it so special was I was surrounded by hundreds of people who came to see just me on a very cold, wintry day. And if that story isn't Disney-like enough, I ended up passing the Olympic flame to Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz, which was totally unknown to me, and there's a whole nother story which there's not time today. Now, obviously you look at that and say, I've been extremely blessed, I'm very fortunate. Unfortunately, I couldn't go back to practice, and this is the way my life felt to me at that moment. What do I do? What do I do with all these blessings? Well, I had the opportunity to see other people who had been injured, and they kept saying, where did you do your rehab? It was pretty awkward for me to say, my house. Well, we want what you have. And Jan was working with people who wanted more therapy, who would pay for more therapy, who just wanted an opportunity. And we said to each other, somebody needs to create a specialty clinic for people with spinal cord injuries. Well, I was reading on the internet one day, and guess what I ran across? This quote attributed to Gandhi in some permutation, but this is the one that I found. You must be the change you want to see in the world. And I realized that change had already found me. It was my turn now to try and change the situation for other people. So Jan and I decided that it was going to be us. So we created a nonprofit. We put $500 in the bank. And 9.5 years ago, we opened a clinic to be that specialty clinic for people with paralysis. It's a licensed physical therapy clinic. We have very meager beginnings. You can see we have an empty 1,000 square foot room, a blue mat, a pair of hand weights, and a milk crate for our filing cabinet. 9.5 years later, we have a very crowded 4,000 square foot room full of state-of-the-art equipment that helps our 13 staff members give people the best opportunity that we can to recover from these situations. So you remember my $250 Home Depot harness? This is now the real $85,000 harness developed by the neuroscientist that I saw on TV that night. And our therapists have become very skilled at providing what's called body weight supported locomotor training, where we try and reawaken those circuits that have been paralyzed by someone's injury or disease. We have invested in aquatic therapy pools that have integrated variable speed treadmills in the floor, and video cameras so that you can see what's going on under the water, and water jets and parallel bars, so that the buoyancy of the water allows freedom of movement. And just about anything you can think about on land, we've been able to figure out how to do in water. 3 years ago, we were very complimented when the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation approached us and said, we want you to be part of our NeuroRecovery Network, which is a nationwide collaborative effort involving 7 research centers and 5 community fitness and wellness facilities. And we're very proud of that because we didn't pursue them, they pursued us. And just recently we were able to add a state-of-the-art robotic ambulator, which is the only one west of Denver. And through the enormous charity of some great philanthropists, the Sorensen Legacy Foundation, we've been able to bring this technology to the Intermountain West for the first time. We also have a pediatric component to this where we can now train kids with cerebral palsy and other difficulties on this type of device. So what is this all about? This is about people. This is about people whose lives have been devastated as change chose them. This is about giving people an opportunity now to choose change to reach their best possible outcome. It's helping them evolve in devastating circumstances, catastrophic. Their lives are turned upside down. It's helping them with that evolution. And Jan and I hope that in some small way, we've helped our community evolve into a little bit better place by providing something that wouldn't otherwise be available. I have learned an enormous amount through this adventure. So much so that if I were given the opportunity to be made whole again, but I would have to forget what I've learned, I wouldn't take that opportunity. And every time I say that, it actually surprises myself, because I miss my body a lot. The other thing that I've come to realize is that we all are paralyzed at some point in time by something. Mine just happened to be a physical paralysis. You may be paralyzed by fear of failure. You may be paralyzed by prejudice, by bias, by ignorance, by addiction, by abuse, by something. But overcoming that paralysis is going to allow you to evolve. Now, I don't have the answer of how you overcome that. There's lots of smarter people out there than that have those answers. What I can suggest to you is really the philosophy of Gandhi. And he said, start where you are and with what you see. I hope in whatever adventure you have that you're as fortunate as I am, and you have as many as divine blessings as I've received. Thank you very much.